Hi, I'm Hayley Ferguson, and this is Beyond Reality, the podcast where I chat with the people behind and sometimes in front of the TV shows you love. In this episode of Beyond Reality, I chat with Laura Cassidy. At the time of recording, she was the executive producer on Farmer Wants a Wife. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Hayley. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me.
A
It's been
pleasure.
it's been a while since we have worked together. I'm trying to think back to when it was, but I think it was in Byron Bay on Bride and Prejudice season 2.
Yes, I think it was.
Yeah, that was fun. That was
It was a
such a
fun
little
shoot.
fun 3-week gig in Byron Bay.
It was great. It's still one of my favorites, I think, that we did. Good show, great story, and it's super fun to be away as well. Like we were living in this like little village town and getting to film everywhere. I think before like reality television ruined Byron Bay. So it was kind of nice to get access to everything. So it was good.
Yeah, day trips to the Big Prawn.
Farm and, Byron pub and yeah, it was great. I mean, we're talking like we had all this spare time, which we didn't.
Yeah, we definitely did it. I did like half of it was like night shift as well. So it was a really good mix because during the day I could just go to the beach.
Yeah, so good. Great job.
Well, I've wanted to get you on the podcast because you're such an experienced producer, but you have a lot of experience in relationship shows. So I think it's going to be really fun to talk a bit more about that.
Oh, I feel under pressure. Yeah, I've mostly done relationship shows. I don't really know why. I think that's just the way it's sort of the cookies crumbled that way. But yeah, I do kind of take a bit more pleasure, I think, in doing those kind of shows because I feel like I get a lot more out of them personally. But, I do like to throw in a competition show every now and then.
Yeah, definitely. Now we'll get to your career trajectory, but I guess before we get into that, I would love you to explain just the role of an executive producer because that's what you're doing now.
Yep. So I've been exec producing for a couple of years now. The role is largely managerial, actually. I think a lot of, well, maybe back in the day when I was coming up through, I thought it was more to do with, having ownership of overall creative, but actually you do, but it's a lot more collaborative and a lot more managerial than I realized it was. So that's been a really interesting learning curve, I think. Basically the role is, you're sort of on from start to finish depending on the show. So starting off I would do like the creative breakdown alongside the production company obviously, and then in conjunction with the commissioning network. So you go back and forth a bunch of times with them about the creative. And then once that's sort of locked down, you're sort of into casting and casting the show, pitching. Often you're going back and forth with the network quite a lot to perfect and hone in on what they want the show to be. And then once you're through casting, you're in pre-production and then you're looking after pre-production and production. So you can be across obviously crewing up the show, and then you've got all your departments that you're looking after, and then you're looking at budget and schedule as well and making sure that that marries up with the creative, which is tricky, especially now these days. Things have changed a fair bit now. The budgets are really, really tight, so the schedules are tight, and then your creative's got to be tight, and then there's not a lot of room to move, so you're doing a lot of pivoting quite a lot of the time, even through the shoot. And then apart from that, it's putting out fires. It's just constant problem solving. Like constantly, like can be anything from crew, creative. You would be looking after the budget, the schedule during the shoot process. You're putting out a bunch of fires. So every day you go into the office, you think that it's going to be, a nice, easy day. Everything's organized, but then you're just immediately confronted with issues. And so you've just got to be able to step in and problem solve all the time, but also sort of plan ahead at the same time. It's quite a lot of work and quite a lot of juggling and balancing. And there's a lot of personalities that you're dealing with as well. So I think that's something that I found really tricky to learn and sort of had to get across. It's like my job is not just creative anymore, it's everything else as well. And so people are looking at you to make decisions and things like that. And you've got to be able to do that confidently and calmly, which I'm still learning. And you're lucky enough, you'll also then go into post-production. So yeah, that would be the job.
And there's so much to your role as an executive producer. What do you find like the most satisfying? What do you love about the role?
I think for me, and especially on Farmer, which is the show that I've mostly been associated with in that role, I think it's realizing that the role is so massive on a big show and there's so much you've got to juggle. It's been really, really hard. Like it's been a hard job, but I think I've surprised myself in that I've got through it a few times now. And there's always things that come up that surprise you and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to fix this? And you just do. and you just get through it and you do it as best as you can. I think that really shows you that you're a lot more capable than you think you are, which I think for me has been really great just for on a personal level. I mean, it's so great to be at the head of a program and a big one and be the person that's right at the top, and that's great. But personally, I think it really is the achievement, like getting through everything that is so hard all the time. It's just a nice way to sort of know that you're capable and you can do it.
Yeah, I love that. It's like constantly rising to the challenge.
Yeah, and it is challenging.
So take me back. Like, did you always want to work in TV?
Yes, sort of. When I was in high school and we were finishing up, I kind of knew that I wanted to go into television. And I think it was because when you're a 90s kid, I feel like television it had in that era a really strong impact on a lot of us. I think also reality TV was taking off in the 2000s. I think Big Brother was starting and it was very exciting, and it was changing the scape as we were growing up.
So when I was finishing school, I felt like I wanted to do TV, but I didn't know whether I was going to do journalism or go into production. Or I also wanted to do science and medicine. So I applied for all of that.
Those are very different careers.
I know.
Medicine or TV.
I've always been creative. My mother wanted me to do fine art, and I was like, Mum, I'm never going to make any money. I loved science, though. I loved it. And I liked the idea of doing medicine, but I knew that I wasn't going to be as successful because I knew that medicine was very like it's super academic, and I am, but I thought science would be more fun than medicine. And anyway, I ended up choosing television, and I never went back.
So you went to university. Can you tell me about that?
Yep. So I got into Griffith Film School. We had a huge intake that year. It was like one of the first years that Griffith had their film school up and running. I remember in orientation week, actually, and I still think about this sometimes, one of the lecturers said, we were all sitting in this hall, there's about 100 of us, and one of the lecturers stood up and he said, who here thinks that they're going to make it? Everyone was sort of sitting there, everyone's like really shy, and no one's really putting their hand up or anything. And he goes, okay, 5 people in this room are going to make it, and if you are not one of those 5 that think that right now, you're never going to make it. It was horrifying, but at the same time, I was sitting there and I was like, I'm totally going to make it. I'm not worried about it. But it was also a film course. So this is like loads of people doing like film and stuff like that. That's a bit highbrow. So
yeah, right. So you always knew you wanted to do TV.
Yeah.
And why do you think that was?
Well, I knew the job opportunities were going to be better and the long-term career progression as well. Like for film, it's a hard slog. I've got friends that do film, and it's just like, I just didn't want to devote my life to that if I wasn't really passionate about it. And so, but I knew that TV could be a good career, so I went that direction.
What was your first job in television and how did you land it?
So my first job in TV was on Big Brother in 2008. I was the PA to the series producer and the head of content. That was back when series producers had PAs.
Times have changed.
Oh my God, times have changed. You don't even have PAs anymore, basically. It was so great. Like as part of uni, we had to do work placement. And so I did a lot of time up at Channel 10 in Brisbane. And I think that was great for my CV. So I ended up doing an interview with Jasmine Parkinson, who gave me my first job in TV, working for Alex Mav. It was a great job. Like it was so fun to be out of school and out of uni and working in TV on a big show. Like Big Brother back then was so exciting to work on. Like it was such a big crew and it was live. I remember meeting so many people and being so interested in what everyone was doing. And I was such a baby, but still so thankful for that job. The job was pretty straightforward. Like I really just had to look after Alex. I kind of spent a lot of time trying to like learn everybody else's jobs as well because I was so keen. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, like.
Yeah, that first moment on set.
Yeah, it was great.
And Big Brother's such a huge show, so it must have been like a pretty big deal.
It was massive, and like we'd seen nothing like it, obviously. And it was so lucky that it was being shot in Queensland, and that was kind of my foot in the door. And then, yeah, it sort of changed my life. It was so exciting to be part of. And even now I look back and still think about that job and how fun it was. Like back at the start of, in the mid 2000s, it was really like fun to work in television. It was really exciting and there was a lot more money floating around and you could do bigger things. And Yeah, it was great. It's probably ruined me for every other job.
So when you got that job and you started working on Big Brother, did it really reinforce how much you'd made the right decision and you were where you wanted to be?
It did. I was still sort of questioning what the job was that I wanted to do. Like I kind of always knew that I wanted to go into editorial, but I kind of was trying to grasp what that meant. And it did take me quite a long time to understand what editorial in reality television, particularly, even lifestyle to an extent, what that meant and what it meant to be good at it. So, but I knew I wanted to do it. So, or at least give it a good go.
What happened next for you after that first job? Did you find it easier to move on?
I think it was kind of a blessed time actually, because reality was kind of a good 7 years in. It was sort of really growing. And because we were starting our careers out, we had a lot more opportunities, I think, because we were young and we were PAs and edit assistants and you're doing low sort of jobs where you can there is lots of jobs available. But we did know we had to move to Sydney. So we did that. This is myself and my uni friends. And they got jobs really quickly because they went into post-production. And then I ended up going into a show with Beyond, and as a PA, it was called The Phone. It was a hectic show. It was so exciting. I mean, these days you would never be able to make these shows anymore, I don't think. But yeah, The Phone was a great show.
What was it about?
It was like a treasure hunt through the city, and they got clues on a phone from a mystery millionaire. They could win a prize at the end, and I can't remember exactly the rules of the game, but there was a bunch of really strong producers working on it. It was a hard show, but it was exciting. And so that was my second job I ever did, and then got put in touch with Jonathan Summerhayes, who was at Fremantle at the time, and ended up sort of back in the Fremantle fold, and then was there for a few years as well. So I was lucky, but it was a good time in TV to be there, sort of in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and you started as a PA and then you kind of spent your early years of your career on the production side of things. So, working as a production assist, you also were a script coordinator on shows like The Biggest Loser, The Arias, the New Year's Eve live broadcast from Sydney. So you obviously knew you wanted to get into the editorial side of things, but how did you go about that?
So that was tricky at first. And I think it is the same for most people that want to go into editorial. I think for me, I asked the right questions about what I needed to do to get there. And at the time, generally, people were encouraged to do transcribing if they wanted to get into editorial, because it was a really good way of learning interviews. And back then, a lot of reality shows, and still to this day, are based around strong interviews. So I did transcribing, I think, for a couple of years. It was quite a while. It's such an easy job, but it's a really good way to learn other producers' techniques. So you end up taking on that skill set. And then going into script code, which that job doesn't exist anymore, was also a good way to see how the episodes were put together and what sort of grabs post producers were after and how they were putting their stories together.
What do you mean by script coordinator? Just because, it's not a role that I've done before. So can you explain that?
Yes. So back in the day, what used to happen was the script coordinator would compile all of the transcription grabs into one big document, and all the post producers would be able to look through it and find the best grabs. So now you can do it in an Avid really fast. Just do a script search and it'll bring it all up. But back then, it was that people were still paper editing those days. You would basically compile everything into one hit, and then sometimes the post producer would ask you to find specific grabs, and so you would do all that. So it's the same as what a post AP would do now. It's just it was manual.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you say about spending time as a transcriber and that being a great place to learn the ropes as a producer. And it's a real shame because these days, a lot of those jobs are taken by AI and auto transcription. But I've always said that is such a great role, for someone coming into the industry because, you are watching people's interviews, you are seeing producers' style, you're seeing the grabs that they're trying to get. You see where they're going with the interview. But you also see their mistakes. That's a big thing as well that you find in post is that you can pick up on those those mistakes as well. So yeah, I think it's a really good learning ground, and it is a shame that it just, those jobs are quite rare these days.
It is. And even now, because those jobs are rare, you kind of have to be in the field from the start if you want to go into field producing or story producing in the field, because coming out of post and going into the field is harder, I think, now, because you don't really get that training. You end up going into post producing, and then once you're up doing that, I think to transition into the field I feel like it's a little hard for people, because the job is totally different and it's a lot more intense, and I think you've kind of got to be conditioned for it early. Otherwise, you're kind of not going to put up with it, I suppose is the best way to say it. And I think if you are in the field from early and you want to go into editorial, you really need to be around producers to learn it. But the jobs don't allow that anymore. Like, no one has the time. So everyone's flat chat. No one's got the extra time to sit in on other people's interviews anymore. It's sort of just not something that's done. So it's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, you're kind of expected just to learn on the job and you'll be fine. It's kind of the attitude, because no one has time.
Exactly.
So between 2010 and 2022, you sort of climbed the ranks in editorial. So you went from being a researcher to AP, story producer, senior story, series producer. You went from field and post. You're working on shows like My Kitchen Rules, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise, The Apprentice, Selling Houses, all those kind of big shows. During that time, I guess there's so many experiences that you could talk about. But I guess over that time and over those years, is there a role or a show that you can sort of single out in terms of the impact it had on your career?
Yeah. So I still say this to people when they're APs or producers, new producers. The biggest thing I think that changed for me was I was in reality in an AP role. I ended up taking a job on the living room as a researcher, and it was a step back, but I felt like it was actually going to be better for me because I felt like I just didn't have the training. Like, I think when you're an AP in reality TV, you don't really learn how to shoot. You learn how to do interviews and you learn how to produce, but you don't learn how to really take ownership of your own story, and be responsible for it. On big reality shows, there's a lot of producers, a lot of APs, and there's a lot of support around you. So you don't really have to own much. But in lifestyle, which was what the living room was, it's all on you. You've got to do it yourself. So I did research for a couple of years, which sort of taught me how to, set up shoots, work out what good talent was, work out a storyline. And then they promoted me to back up to AP and then producer eventually. It taught me how to walk away from the office, go out into the field, shoot something myself and be accountable for it, bring it back and know that it had to go through post and be put on air. So no one else could fix it. There were no pickups. I had to do it myself. And I think that really made me a lot better at being able to decide what mattered in the field and not faff around trying to cover everything all the time. Being able to be confident in your decisions, I think, is really important. And that job really taught me that.
Yeah, that's great. I think you're right. Like, there are some APs that come up that, they aren't getting the experience of having to tell a story. They're sort of getting the pieces, and it will depend on a production. It will depend on the producers and the executives or senior story producers around that person, how much experience they'll actually get.
That's exactly right. And I think it was a blessing. It was a hard decision I had to make because I knew I was going to take a step backwards, but I did know that in the end, it was going to serve me a lot more. And it did. It really did. I don't think I would have been as good a producer as I became if I didn't do that job. That's just the way it went for me. And I think I still look back on that and feel like I did learn a lot. And it was really stressful too, having to be really own your own stuff and sort of be able to take it into post and be responsible for it. Otherwise, this story's not going on air. So it was good.
Yeah, I think anytime you can work on post on stuff that you were responsible for in the field, I think is really valuable, because you do pick up on your own mistakes and everyone makes them. But to be able to know how to fix them as well in post is also really valuable. So it doesn't happen that often. Like there's not a lot of time in the schedule sometimes to actually go from field to post because a lot of the time they're running concurrently. So it's a bit of that. And it's also just some people, are more suited to the field. So they won't go into post. But, I love that that's something that I do because I enjoy, both sides of it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's important to do both. I think that unfortunately, like you said, the way our schedules run, generally they are running concurrently and you can't really get in unless you can get in at the back end of a show. And in which case, then really you need to be kind of going into post intermittently and going into the field intermittently. Like you kind of have to balance it out, which is sort of what I ended up doing in the end.
Yeah. So was that role in the living room, was that a full-time job or was it you were taking contract to contract?
It was contracted, but it was a long job. So because the show was going to air Friday nights and it was a long run. So I think I was employed for most of the year. Like it was great. It wasn't full time, but it was a long contract. And I think I did it for about 4 years or at least 3. So yeah, it was good, but I was out of the reality loop for a long time, which did affect my ability to go back into reality. But eventually you get there. So that was fine.
Yeah. And what sort of stories were you working on while you were at the living room? Because obviously as a lifestyle show, they sort of usually would have like a renovation beat. They would have a animal type beat, a cooking beat in the show. So what area were you focused on?
I was mostly doing travel and reno were mostly the things that I did. And it just sort of fell that way. Like we all did everything. I think there was about 4 or 5 researchers on that show back in the day. So it was big. And then 4 or 5 producers and then a bunch of post people. It was quite a big production for what it was. But yeah, I ended up doing travel a lot of the time, which was really stressful as a researcher.
Why was it stressful?
Well, because you're not really there. Like you're setting something up from afar, and you're dealing with people speaking another language. You're basically trying to deal with fixers, and it's sort of, fixers, like they can be great, they can be not so great. That was hard. And then having to like hand over to a producer and be like, I hope it's okay, like good luck, because you're not going with it. So you're kind of just sending them off and hoping for the best. It was hard work, but it was great because it teaches you how to like really set up a shoot and make sure it's organized, like, which was good. When I went into APing, I was just mostly doing reno. That was all I was shooting for a long time, which was great.
Yeah. You mentioned that, working in lifestyle for 4 years, that had a bit of an impact on, your ability to get back into reality and it was a bit more of a challenge. In what way do you mean?
Because I was out of the loop. So by then, I can't remember when I left that show, but by then, reality TV was really going. There was a lot of shows to work on. And generally, I think everyone works in loops. So, sort of the production schedules of all production companies and when their shows are running. So you sort of can, be at this production company for this part of the year and then you'll jump over to this one and then do that show. But by then, because everything was so established and I was out of the loop, I found it hard to sort of slot back in because all those jobs were taken. And this was just before things got really, really big. So, and it's the contacts as well. When you've been out of reality for a long time, people are sort of like, oh, but you've only done lifestyle. And it's like, well, yes, but I'm probably better than a lot of your APs. So yeah, anybody that's ever done lifestyle and wants to go into reality, I'm always like, yes, because I know that they can just be sent off and they will absolutely do a good job because they know how to bring back a story.
Yeah, there's definitely been sort of those dips and like fluxes in the industry where there's been times where there's not a lot of jobs, everyone stays where they are. And then there's been other times in the industry over the years where there's been so many jobs and people have been like promoted left, right, and center. And it's crazy because it really depends. Like a lot of people progressed really quickly and it really depends on, timing and when you got into the industry of where you landed in that. Like some people have like, spent years as APs or spent years in production wanting to move into editorial, and other people like, started as an AP, did a job, moved to story producer, was senior story in no time.
Wild, isn't it? I look back now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was an AP and a researcher and a producer for a really long time. And yeah, now these days I sort of look at people coming through and they've got 2 AP credits and then they're producing and then they're like, then they're asking for senior story jobs. And it's like, oh my gosh, like how much knowledge do you really have? Like how much experience, how many different shows, like I think there's a lot to say for working on a lot of different formats as well, which is what I really wanted to do. Like, I never wanted to stay full time at a company and just work on those shows. Like, I really wanted to jump around and try different things and have a sort of a big variety of experience on my CV, because I was sort of like trying to work out what I was best at as well, and the types of people that I wanted to work with. And I think generally in TV you end up on really great crews anyway. It doesn't matter where you are working. I think the team is always pretty good. Like, I don't think there's ever any kind of a show where it's awful. I don't think that happens. But the jobs are hard, but like, I think the teams are always good. So yeah.
Well, let's talk about Farmer Wants a Wife. These days, you're the executive producer, and you've been the executive producer on Farmer Wants a Wife for several years now. Can you take me back to that moment when you first stepped into the role as executive producer?
Yeah. So I did a series. I've never done Farmer Wants a Wife before, but for series 13, Janine Cooper was the executive producer, and she brought me in as the co-executive producer. And that was the first time I'd ever done that role. And it was really hard sort of finding my feet in that role, because I think it's a tricky job.
No, I think that's interesting. Can you talk to how the role of co-EP differs from the role of the EP?
Yeah. So essentially, the executive producer is the be all and end all. Like, the buck stops with you. Your co-EP doesn't have that responsibility really, but they need to be able to step into your job if you are incapacitated for some reason, or you're busy, got to do something else, or suddenly problems are arising and you've got to devote all your attention to one space. The co-EP really needs to be able to step in and run the show. That level of difference between a senior story or a sort of a series producer. Sometimes people say the series producer is the same as a co-EP. It depends. If you don't have a co-EP, then yes, the series producer has to be able to do that. And that's hard because the EP generally isn't looping the co-EP into every single thing they're doing. So for me, that role, I sort of asked to be included on more stuff, like network stuff that I felt like I needed to be across, but I didn't have anything to do with it, but I was sort of more trying to learn.
Kind of, is it, in part, obviously you have your own responsibilities, but it's a little bit of shadowing the EP in some ways?
Yeah, and it's different on every show. Like, so on Farmer, the co-EP is really running a lot more story because story is so heavy on that show, whereas on another show, the co-EP might be in charge of challenges or dates or whatever it might be on another show, or the studio element or something. It just depends on how people want to divide up the labor. But generally, the EP will be the one dealing with the network most of the time. So anyway, after series 13 wrapped up, the EP decided that they weren't going to come back to the show. And then I was happy to continue on in the co-EP role. I just wasn't sure who the EP was going to be. Ricky Proust called me one day and he said, "Do you want to do the job?" And I was like, "My God, are you sure?" Like, I was like, "You sure?" It was awesome. It was so great to be considered and backed. And they were so supportive. Eureka was like, "Yes, we think you can do it. Off you go. Like, if you want to do it, it's yours." And I was terrified, but I knew I had to say yes. It was the most important offer I'd ever been given. So I felt like really excited. And also, I think the reason I was surprised was because the show is so big. It's such a big production that I thought the first time I was going to EP a show, it would be a smaller show, a lot more contained, less eps. But to be offered that for Channel 7 was such a massive thing for me that I was so excited, but I was so terrified at the same time. It was a big job.
Yeah, definitely. And it's such a beloved format in Australia. It's been going for so many years. It's been on, multiple networks. It really is one of those shows that stood the test of time.
Yeah, so we're up to series 16 now, and it has been rested for a few years in the middle there. So this show's been running for around 20 years. So a lot of people have worked on it. The more people I speak to in television, the more people, "Oh yes, I EP'd one of those series of Fun What's What." So it's almost like a little rite of passage for EPs in the country to do it. It's been around that long, which is kind of nice in a way to be part of that legacy and see how the show has evolved as well to what it was back then. I think they used to shoot it in like 2 weeks. It was
wow.
4 episodes. It was very doco. And now it's like 19 episodes, big reality format. Like, yeah, it's changed a lot. So I'm impressed and honoured to be part of that lineage.
Yeah. And when you moved into the role, did you have any ideas about what you wanted to bring to the show as the executive producer?
I think it was two things. The show has a reputation for being really difficult to work on. And so I know that when I came in, I really wanted the team to feel supported. It's not that they weren't before that, they were. But I think for me, I really wanted to do that and make sure that I was the kind of person that could be a supportive leader. That was hard to do as well because the show is so big that you can't coddle people all the time, but you've got to be able to be there for them when it's hard. And because it is shooting remotely and there isn't a lot of support out there, you kind of have to be available to people when they get overwhelmed or they need support from the office. So I really wanted to bring that from my perspective in. And the other thing I wanted to do was, by that point, I had done quite a lot of relationship shows and knew that I was quite good at that as a producer. But there is a difference between being a great story producer in a reality relationship show to becoming the executive producer of the show. I found I wanted to help producers be great at that format, but I did find that it is tricky to relay sometimes how to do that because there's a certain amount of instinct that comes into being great at producing relationship shows, which is different to other formats. And sometimes you can't teach that. And that's a lesson that I've learned that has been tricky because, I mean, you could teach it if you had a lot more time, but we don't. So I've tried my best to sort of help transfer some of my skills that I've learned to new producers.
Yeah, and on that, what do you think it takes to be a good story producer when it comes to a relationship show?
So for a relationship show, I think that you've got to care. So a lot of producers that aren't super into relationship shows sort of just surface level deliver the content. But in order to make it great, you've got to be invested in it and you've got to be interested in the story and you've got to be interested in the outcome of that story and be able to insert yourself into it enough that you can produce that story along without obviously being in it. And I think that takes a lot of instinct. I think that generally speaking, mostly women are good at that. However, there are a few guys, absolute unicorns out there that can jump in and do it. And so I think you've also got to be able to read people really well and sort of be able to foresee what decisions they're going to make in the future and how that's going to impact your storyline and where they're really leaning. And you've got to be able to relate to people well enough that you can produce them, but you are also still supportive of them. That takes a lot of work and a lot of emotional investment on the producer's behalf, and which is exhausting. Like that's hard work. If anyone loves relationship shows and that's their bread and butter, they'll know that that takes a lot of energy to do. But I think the outcome is so worth it when you can do that well. So it's just a different level of investment, I think. I have not worked on Survivor, but I would imagine that those producers would have a similar investment. I think you've done Survivor, right?
I've done a lot of Survivor. My career is like a lot of Survivor.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a relationship show, but it kind of is. So you kind of like, it's obviously no one's getting together in the end, but like it's about relationships and strategy more than love. So I think maybe being a producer on that would be sort of similar in a way.
Yeah, I see what you mean. There's a lot of predicting behavior and a lot of that because that whole show, like there's lying and deceit and you're watching things unfold without necessarily talking to them because it's very hands off when the game is on. You are having to read their conversations and decide and make split decisions on whether they're lying in that moment, whether you think that that's a real conversation or a fake conversation. So yeah, no, I see what you mean.
And then again, it's different again if you're going to do like a shiny floor. So if you're producing on Idol or The Voice or something like that, that's a different sort of producing again. So I think really the relationship shows, you've got to be really in it. You've got to be invested.
Yeah. And you said that Farmer Wants a Wife has a reputation as being a challenging show to produce. And I guess that comes with the fact that you have farmers that are stationed all around the country and a producer and crew will go out to their farms to film with the women that are vying for their, love. What are the challenges that working in remote locations poses on that production?
So there's a few. Not everybody wants to take 2 months out of their life and go and live in the middle of nowhere where there's next to no resources. Like some of these towns they're like 500 people. They're like not big. And then it's really distances and accommodation. So, the accommodation can be a bit rough. And then the driving between where your crew is living to the farm can be exhausting, which we try to minimize as much as we can. And that impacts your shoot day, your schedule, like how much time you've got to film stuff. It's fatigue as well. Like that's really important to us. It's also like you can't just nip out and buy stuff at Kmart or like go to Officeworks or whatever. Like there's nothing out there. So, you know, you're lucky if you've got a couple of stores. If you need like props or anything, you don't have access to anything, which is part of the charm as well, I think. But it can make things frustrating. So we generally have to be really logistically savvy about how we make that show. Like we'll often send containers out prior to shooting with a bunch of stuff in it. And then as the producers and the crews come back into Sydney to shoot events, we'll reload them back up with stuff and send them back out. The other thing is like you're outside all the time. So it's an outdoor show. You're dealing with like 40-degree days. Like it can be hot, snakes, bushfires. Sometimes if the season's dicey, a couple of years ago it was very bad and there was a lot of fire around, which was really stressful. Flooding, snow, like, you know, depending on where we're filming, you could have a 40-degree day on one farm and then, you know, another farm's snowing. So there's just a lot to manage when it comes to that stuff as well. So there's a lot off camera that the guys have to consider.
Yeah, obviously, to make it, you know, the smooth running TV show that it is, and to make it look effortless and charming.
A lot of effort goes into making it look effortless.
Yeah. How do you find these people? How do you find these farmers that, you know, are in towns of 500 people? Because I can imagine that it's not a show that has thousands of applicants trying to be on the show. Like these farmers, you know, some of them wouldn't own a TV.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like I've seen some wild stuff during casting. Like I'll generally go out and meet and sometimes I'll film with them if they're looking really like they could be a good option to be on the show. And some of the conditions these people live in is just wild. Like they basically live very simply because all their assets and all their energy goes into farming and they don't need a lot of stuff. And they do spend hours and hours doing farming. So, you know, I go out to these places and like they won't have much going on in there. And, you know, they're so rural, like internet's another issue. Like we can't get internet half the time or coverage. So casting is more like generally a lot of them will approach us most of the time. So we just need to sort of get the word out that we're looking and then they will come to us. And that's always better because no one wants anyone to be on this show that isn't 100% looking for a partner. It's just not what the show's about. And it is why it is successful because people who come and do the program want to meet people, they want to take the time off, they want to invest in it. And that's really important to me. And I think to everybody who is part of it. So generally, if the farmers are approaching us or their families are approaching us and dobbing them in, that's a good sign. But we do need to get the word out. So it's a lot of targeted outreach by the casting team. They contact a lot of local pubs in towns and get them to put the word out. And generally, country people are great. They're very happy to put the word out. And they get really behind people when they get cast. It doesn't take long for the whole town to know that somebody's being considered for the show, especially once I go out and shoot something with them. Although it does take a long time. And it's quality, not quantity.
That's really interesting that it's actually the reputation that Farmer Wants a Wife has that's kind of driving people to apply or for their families wanting them to be married off. Yeah, that's something that actually surprises me because I thought it would be a lot of, you know, target casting and whatnot. But it's great that you actually have farmers coming to you wanting to find a wife.
100%. For me, always, it's so much better if they come to us because it means they really want it. And I don't think people realize as well, like there's a lot of family legacy and money tied up in farming that if they can't pass it down to another generation, it means they're going to lose their farm or sell it, which by the fourth-ish generation, families don't really want to do. They want to keep it in the family. And in order to do that, they need to have a partner that's going to absolutely stick by them and that's it, it's us to the end kind of thing. So there's that built-in necessity to find the right person. which is part of why I think the show is so successful, because the guys, the farmers, they really want it. And we make sure that the women that we put in are going to stick it out.
Yeah, wow. I mean, talking about the success, the latest stat that I could see was that in 14 seasons, so earlier this year, 14 seasons in, across 17 years, 2 TV networks, there's been 11 marriages, 7 long-term relationships, and 27 children. What do you think the key is to Farmer Wants a Wife success? Because even if those stats aren't 100% correct, there might be more. You know, that's a pretty high success rate. That's pretty incredible.
I think it's because when we cast the show, we do take a lot of steps to genuinely match people. So you've got 2 layers to the casting. You're obviously casting the show for interest. It is a television show. You want to make sure that it's going to be interesting to the audience. But at the same time, they need to be genuine matches for these guys. And so that part of it is also really important. And I think that during the casting process, we're also looking at which ladies have applied for which farmer and how suitable they are, and are they going to, you know, are they actually going to stick it out kind of thing, because I don't really want just a bunch of random women going onto somebody's farm. This guy's taken like 3 months off his job to do this. So you want them to have the best options they can have, that they're going to meet the right person. So it's kind of, there's a lot of pressure because you're sort of casting for him and you're casting for the show. So it's like, it's just a lot of layers going on there, and it's a lot of pressure to make the right decisions for these guys.
As a format, it's like a dating app in the sense that the women get to see a bio, or they, you know, they get insight into the farmer and they actually apply to be on that farmer's farm to date that farmer.
That's right. And so I'll narrow that down to the most suitable women. And then when everybody agrees on the shortlist, that shortlist will get presented to the farmer, and he will also see a bio of the women, and he will get to choose his favorites, basically. So it's not like on the first day everybody shows up, he doesn't know what he's getting. So he will know, which I think helps as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I love what you're doing. I think it's amazing that the show has been going for so many years and continues to be so popular. And I can't wait to see what's next with Farmer Wants a Wife.
Oh, me too.
To sort of look back on your career as a whole, I guess you've worked on a lot of relationship shows. What do you love most about working on relationship shows?
So this is really weird because I am a very happy single girl, but I do love being part of other people's love stories. Like, I do really like helping people find each other, and I love seeing that happiness. I don't think I'm particularly good at relationships myself personally, but I seem to be pretty good at helping other people get together. So I do like that. I do love a story where there's trials and tribulations, and there's highs and lows, and you've got to overcome obstacles. I love that stuff. So I think that is part of the reason well-made relationship shows are still very successful. It's just so human to want to connect with that. So I think that's just why I love it. And honestly, I feel like in my career, that's just sort of the path I've fallen into. I do love like loads of other formats. I wouldn't particularly say that I lean towards relationship shows. It's just sort of how my career has unfolded, that those are the ones I've mostly done.
Yeah. And I mean, you even mentioned, you talk about being part of other people's love stories. You were mentioned in Alicia Aiken-Ratburn's book as one of the producers on The Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise.
Yeah, that was terrifying when I read that book, and I was like, oh my gosh, what's she saying about me? It wasn't too bad. I think I came out fairly okay, but it was sweet. I mean, Alicia did a lot of the Bachelor franchise. She did a few series of that, I think maybe 3. I worked with her quite a lot, and so I was really invested in her storyline, and I really wanted the best for her. And it was hard because you're producing somebody as well, but you're also on their team, you know, like, so it was kind of cool to be mentioned, but at the same time it was terrifying. I was like, oh.
I actually loved it. Like, I listened to that book as an audiobook. I just really wanted to know like who were the mentions, like, because I knew people that she was talking about.
Yeah, it was there was a few weeks there where everybody was a bit like, oh, what's she gonna say?
Yeah.
No, she was a good sport. So
yeah, definitely. Do you have like sort of I don't know, what you'd call like a pinch yourself moment, a moment in television where you were just like, I can't believe I'm doing this and this is my job?
I feel like every time I'm working, even when it's really, really hard and it's stressful, I still love it. And everything can be melting down around you. And I still take pleasure in the fact that it's such a unique job and we get to do so much interesting stuff that not everyone gets to do. And I think there's been two jobs for me that were probably the most exciting. Celebrity Apprentice was amazing. We got to do some wild stuff in Sydney, and working with celebrities is always really fun. They make it a lot easier too, I think, a lot of the time. The Amazing Race was great too, because you get to see so much and do so much unique stuff, traveling that you probably wouldn't get to do. So those are probably the two most exciting jobs I've done. Working overseas, like I've worked on Asian shows in Singapore and Malaysia, and I've also done The Circle in London when they were shooting the first series.
Wow, I loved that.
So
that was like really interesting because that was coming out during COVID times.
Yep.
And obviously my interest about it as well was around the production, because obviously that show is essentially everyone in their own little apartment, not interacting with anyone except online on the circle.
That's exactly right. It was great because it was my first job in London and it was a big show, and it was so interesting to see the way that they made programs. It was so exciting to be part of that. Such a big show, and they invited me to go back the next year, but I got offered a promotion here, so I stayed. I kind of wish I had gone back over and kept doing the show, but I did pitch it to 10. I did contact, I think it was Stephen Tate at the time when COVID was going badly, and I said, you know what, you should be making The Circle because it's totally COVID safe.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they could get the rights to do it at the time. So yeah, that was a good show to do.
What's the weirdest thing you've done in television? And I mean, you have worked on FBOY Island. You co-EP'd 2 seasons of that. I'm pretty sure you've got some weird things because that is the most ridiculous show.
I mean, when I was working on X Factor, I think it was like maybe around 2012, Mel B had come out to do the show and she gave me her child to look after. And I was like, I'm looking after a Spice Girls baby. I was like, and I was young and I was like, I don't know what it's doing. So that was a really weird moment for me because I grew up with the Spice Girls and obviously it was very exciting, but that moment was strange for me. And I still think about that as being a really strange thing that's happened to me.
How did you entertain her child?
Occupied around Fox Studios for the day. It was just bizarre. I was terrified too. I was like, oh my God, nothing can happen to this child. So that was really intense. And then, FBOY Island, there's loads of nudity and stuff. In interviews, they'll be getting naked half the time in the interviews, which is wild. You can't use half of it. So, the lads were sort of given free rein to basically do what they wanted. It was such a wild show too. The format was great. It was so cutting edge too back then. And I also got to meet Stevie Nicks too, which was very cool. She came to Sydney for X Factor a few years ago, and that was amazing. She's probably the most important person I've ever met, really. That was cool.
Wow. Look, the industry is at a really difficult time at the moment. Commissions are down. There's a lot of TV producers, TV crew out of work. And I guess this is it feels like it's probably the toughest time in television we've seen, definitely in my career. What's your thoughts on where the industry's at and what needs to happen?
It's a hard question to answer because I'm obviously by no means super high up at a company that's, very tapped into this stuff. But I did get to jump on a call with Jen Mullen, who's the Fremantle Global CEO, not too long ago. The discussion that we were having was around how things are changing and where things are at. And at the moment, people are obviously, and we've been saying this for years, people are moving away from mainstream media, which we've all known that's happening. With social media coming in and YouTube getting massive, audiences are now able to pick and choose what they want to view. And as a whole, it seems to be that people are moving more towards less produced content. So they want to watch stuff that's real, and it doesn't have to be particularly well produced. They want to watch stuff that feels real to them, I think, and especially younger audiences. Kids are not sitting down to watch Farmer Wants a Wife necessarily. They're not going to sit there for that amount of attention span either. People's attention spans reducing anyway. So they want to watch quick stuff. So there was that element that we discussed. And it also seems to be that the content is moving more towards anything that's gaming adjacent, sports adjacent, less formatted, long run shows. The networks are still making those shows because they need the programming time and there's nothing to replace it with at the moment. So I think that YouTube is going to be massive. It has the ability to broadcast so much variety as well. They seem to also feel that long form documentary, high-end documentary is also popular as well at the moment, but that's also really, that takes ages to make and it's expensive. Like you can't knock out a documentary, that takes a lot of work. So it's hard because I think a lot of the traditional television companies are losing commissions, but it also means they're losing staff. And it means that people that have had careers in TV, can't necessarily stick it out anymore because we don't have the jobs. So I think what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to end up leaving. If you can't sort of hang in there, like people will start to leave and find other work. I think it's already happening now. I think people have left because they can't live like this. And that's unfortunately a sort of the state of flux that we're in. I don't think it's going to get any better. I don't think that it will never be what it was. I don't think, I think we've all lived through the golden age of reality television now. And I think that things are pivoting, and I think that it's going to take a long time for everybody to find their feet and work out what the best investment of time and money is. And I think we're already starting to see shorter shows, less episodes, much cheaper productions to make. And I think that if people want to stick it out in the industry, they can. They've just got to be able to, maybe we all need to be working on side hustles for a while, which is it's hard enough in this job to do that when you dedicate so much time to it when you are employed. But yeah, it's a tricky time to live through, but it's not unusual. Like people's viewing habits change all the time. It is historically what happens. It's just unprecedented how big the change has been recently since COVID and since people's viewing habits are changing so rapidly, which is exciting, but it's also really, it's going to be tough for people in production companies, I think, to keep up.
Yeah, definitely. It is a really tough time. And I think there's so much that's unknown right now, and that is quite scary. And I know a lot of people are worried, and I guess we just have to hope that, the dust settles and things kind of, like you said, I don't think they'll go back to being the way they were, but hopefully there's a new normal that's sustainable for the industry.
I think what potentially, like we've got to reduce how many people are in the industry as well, I think. And I think that people will have to become more multi-skilled. So it's like you can't just be a field producer. You've got to be able to do production, development, and post. I think that's probably the way that people will get through it. The more jobs you can do means you're more employable. It also means that you can run start to finish on a show. I think that that's where people should be looking to develop their skills. But I acknowledge that is really hard to do. And at the moment, people are desperately hanging on to their jobs. So it'll just be a bit of a long game.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that leads me to an interesting question, because being such a tricky time in TV, but what advice would you give someone who is wanting to start out in the television industry now?
I don't want to say don't, because if you want to do it, you want to do it, and you will get there. I think I would say don't get too attached to one kind of style of TV. I think it might not be as exciting initially, but I think if you can develop your skills in online social media and really get good at that stuff, I think that that's going to serve you longer than just traditionally going up through the ranks on a TV show, because eventually I think that that's the kind of skills we're probably all going to have, because stuff needs to be made fast and cheap. And the way to do that, it will be severely reduced down to a handful of people that can do a lot of jobs. I think that's probably the way it's going to go. So I would be keeping up with your side hustle, and I would be really honing those social online skills that will keep you super employable in a creative industry.
Yeah, definitely. Laura, do you have time for some quickfire questions?
Yeah, I'm terrified of this part.
It's the scariest part of the interview. Everyone fears this part.
I'm really terrible at this.
All right. Your time starts now. What is your favorite reality TV show to watch?
Selling Sunset.
What was the last TV show you watched?
The Last of Us.
Who is the most famous person you've met through working in TV?
Stevie Nicks.
What is your dream show to work on that you haven't already worked on?
Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
Best location you've been to for work?
Oh, India.
What show did you work on for that?
Amazing Race.
Oh, amazing. What cancelled TV show needs to make a comeback?
You know what? I would say FBOY Island.
I want FBOY Island to come back. I loved that show. Have you ever been on TV?
Bachelor. Bachelor in Paradise. I think Celebrity Apprentice a lot.
The manipulative reality producer getting involved.
These days, I ask people to take me out of stuff. I think I became a meme once for Bachelor in Paradise. It was actually Alicia. I was really excited for her getting a date and I was like totally in shot, which is so dumb. I think it got screenshotted and made into a meme, like something like, you know, when you're excited for, you know, your bestie's date or something like that. It was so bad. It was awful. I hated it.
That's so funny. If you could be on any reality TV show, what would you be on?
Maths.
Maths.
Love it.
If you could have dinner with any celebrity, dead or alive, who would it be?
Mick Jagger.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Well, you've made it to the end of the Quickfire Questions, Laura. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
The fact that you are at the top of one of the biggest shows in Australia is amazing, and it's a testament to all the hard work and all the experience that you've built up over your career.
Thank you so much, Hayley. That's so lovely. It's really nice to hear. I don't really feel like that a lot of the time, but I suppose that's true.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.